Hi guys, and welcome to a Hector lecture guide to the fight P3S Phoenix. This is the third fight in the Pandaemonium Savage Raid series. This is actually just an updated version of a guide that I've released previously, but with quite a few fixes, as well as some optimizations to different strategies that have been discovered since. For this fight, you need light parties. Unlike normal light parties, this won't be tank, healer, and 2 DPS. This will instead have both tanks in one and both healers in the other, because the stacks that hit during this target a random tank and a random healer. I recommend having a melee and a range group. You're also going to have light party spread groups. These are the same light parties, just with set spread positions, so you know during when you need to spread quickly where to spread to. Be aware that these spreads will start from the edge normally, so you want to have it with the majority of players still on the edge. You need partners, and that's a tank and a healer partnered with a DPS, and each of them needs an intercardinal position. Those same partners need to have an order for when they're lined up for Divebombs to stack with a partner. And similarly, Divebombs should preferably have pre-assigned spread positions, but this is as simple as take your previous positions and say tank healers go right, DPS go left, facing always relative to where the boss jumps. Lastly, late in the fight, there's a mechanic called Firestorms. For Firestorms, you can go with the standard positions, or you may want to instead agree to go with Elmo strat style positions, which looks like this. Anyways, let's break down the fight. Scorched Exaltation is your raid wide. It hits fairly hard, so don't forget to mitigate. Heat of Condemnation is a tank buster that spawns tethers on 2 random players. To make this easy, in general, try to have the whole group stacked together so tanks can pick up their tethers easily. You can in fact have your off tank in front of the group so they immediately pick up first tether. When these hit, they hit very hard, so make sure that you mitigate tanks and are spread far enough away because they've got quite a large AoE cleave around them. Experimental Fireplume is the same mechanic that we saw from normal mode. One optimization that we're seeing so far in the fight is a lot of people tend to pull the boss north. This allows you full uptime during this. If you want to pull it north before the cast goes off, it's up to you. I'm going to show this guide as if it was not pulled north, but be aware this is a really easy way to improve the uptime for your melees. For Experimental Fireplume, the entire group needs to be stacked due middle at the start. That's because if you happen to get the large orb like this is no longer always centered. This is baited by a player. If your group's not all in the middle, this can be off center and might lead to people dying when they try to dodge it. So start center, and as soon as you see the Q, dodge out of middle. If instead Experimental Fireplume goes off and you see the small orbs, this is the Shiva style spinning AoE. Wait to see where the first orbs hit, and dodge into either the first or second explosion. Immediately afterwards, the boss is going to cast Cinderwing, so dodge to whichever side is not being cleaved. And then we get Darkened Fire. This is going to spawn the orbs that we've seen in normal mode, but these are baited by either the tanks and healers or the DPS, which is why we have one of each stood on the 4 corners of the arena. There are actually yellow squares marked on the stage that you can use as a guide to where to put your waymarks to know where to drop these fires. If these fires are dropped too close to each other, they will explode, so make sure they're spread far enough apart. Afterwards, the boss gives us a way to make these killable. They're currently invulnerable, but will be all targeted with Brightened Fire AoEs and numbered 1 through 8, just like diamond weapon markers if you've done Diamond Extreme. I'm going to move 5 out of the way, 8 out of the way for a second to show you where 1 through 4 should go, and that's just onto the waymarks numbered 1 and 4. Now, if you look at where they're positioned, they're hitting 2 of the orbs each with their AoE, but there's also a safe spot in the middle. So if you'd like to minimize damage, what you do is you have 5 through 8 stack in that middle, and after each AoE goes off, you swap with the person 4 higher than you. So 1 and 5 swap, 2 and 6 swap, 3 and 7 swap, 4 and 8 swap. This is literally Flood Ray from Diamond Weapon. Now, the adds will only become targetable after they've been hit by enough of these circles. So you need to make sure that your circles are always hitting 2 of them. If you would rather not deal with all of the movement from this, be aware that there's nothing wrong with just having 1-5, 2-6 stacked together immediately and take both AoEs as one after another. You do get a vuln up, but that falls off before the 5th will hit, so 1s will fall off before 5 hits, so you don't have to worry about that too much. Just make sure you hit your party with a light heal in between so they don't die to the second hit. After these adds have become targetable, you need to immediately DPS them down because Darkened Blaze is being cast. This is a hard-hitting raid wide that will only be mitigated or prevented if you kill the ad before it's cast. If one of these goes off, you can survive it with some mitigation and shielding. If two of these go off, the party's wiped. So kill these down as quickly as you can. We get another Heat of Condemnation Tank Buster, so make sure that we deal with this exactly the same way as before. And another Scorched Exaltation raid-wide to heal and mitigate through. Now, Devouring Brand's going to go off, and this is going to spawn the same 4 lava at the Cardinals that we've seen in normal mode. We need to start stacked middle because we're going to get Experimental Fireplume. If this is the out that we saw before, we're going to just immediately run to an agreed corner like A. If instead we get the Shiva, you have to wait. What you're looking for is which one gets hit first, A or B, and run together to that corner. To show that again, but on the other one, if instead the Shiva had gone off and hit A first, we'd all run to A instead. You want to hug the edge when you get there for 2 reasons. 1, because the Devouring Brand is going to get much larger, and 2, because Searing Breeze is going to drop puddles under everyone, and you want to make sure these are stacked well enough that you can just dodge towards the boss to dodge these. Immediately afterwards, prepare for a Cinderwing, either left or right. And then a Tank Buster, I recommend having a pre-assigned position where the group will go for this, like middle, so that the tethers are all in the same place and tanks can pick these up easily. Take them out away from the group. And then prepare for an Experimental Fireplume. All go middle, ready for the tell. In this case, it's an out, so just dodge to the outside. As soon as this goes off, the boss is going to become untargetable, jump away, and reappear on a random side of the arena. And we're going to get ourselves a dash through. This is Divebombs. Now, I recommend getting into your partner stack positions and waiting for the tell from the boss. If the 2 heads on the side are glowing, that means the boss is going to cleave the sides of the arena and we're going to all hit with partner stacks. If instead the middle head is glowing, we're going to spread to our sides because that cleaves the middle and we're all hit with spread AoEs. Note the boss is untargetable during this, so healers feel free to take advantage of that to hit off some GCD heals to keep the party topped up before the upcoming ad phase. As soon as the boss reappears, it becomes untargetable and we get 4 sunburn ads instead. Be aware, for the entirety of ad phase, there's constant fiery rain happening, so light raid-wide damage is hitting everyone. Healers beware. What you want to do with this is immediately have each tank pick up 2 of the ads and start to DPS them down at Cardinals. I recommend having these be adjacent Cardinals so that your DPS and healers can swap targets more easily and can swap to which healer tank they're healing more easily. You want to kill down 1 bird each at the Cardinals, and then rotate to drop the next bird's corpse at a different Cardinal. These need to all be spread out far enough that they will not overlap with their green AoE circles that we've seen from normal mode, otherwise they buff themselves, and then you get yourself a problem. Those are almost certain to guarantee a death or 2 with the next mechanic. Stack up middle, ready for a hard-hitting raid-wide as the ads respawn in a bigger red sunbird form. One big recommendation I have for this is the aggro table stays the same from the little birds. If you don't want aggro to swap and have to deal with potentially having one tank with 3 birds and the other with only 1, have both of your tanks turn off their tank stance. They will keep the aggro. No DPS is going to be able to rip aggro off them, but they're not going to accidentally steal aggro off of each other. Starts at DPS, but almost immediately tethers are going to appear. Their tethers are going to tether to first a player, either a DPS or a tank healer, and then they're going to tether from that player to another player. These are your standard red-purple tethers where when you move far enough away from what you're tethered to, they stretch and they won't do lethal damage. So to deal with these, if you're tethered to a bird, you go opposite that bird and to the side of the bird that's there. If you're tethered to a player, go directly opposite that player. When everybody goes to their positions, it looks a little something like this. Be careful that you're not stood too next to the bird on the side, because as it's about to dash, if you're too close to it, you will get clipped on the way, and that'll lead to you dying. The birds are now going to dash first to the player they're tethered to. As they hit them, that player should do a slight movement outwards to avoid getting clipped by the second dive. Once all these dives have happened, you can, if you want to, group the ads together in middle to allow everybody to heal up, get some AoEs off, maybe even cast your LB if you want to for prog's sake. But then pull the ads apart and just like before, kill them one at a time on Cardinals. Once all 4 birds are dead, if they're spread far enough apart, stack middle for another hard-hitting raid wide to heal through, and the boss will reappear. If any of those green circles overlapped because 2 birds were too close, that's going to lead to the ultimate attack wiping the party from too much damage from the damage buff up. Now, Don't forget, if your tanks have just turned off their tank stance for this part, both of them need to turn it back on, because for the final phase of the fight, auto attacks hit both tanks. Dead Rebirth is going to be an ultimate attack. Make sure that you've got heavy mitigation for this, as this hits very hard. And now we're in the final phase. It starts with the Heat of Condemnation Tank Buster. Have each tank pick up a tether, and spread these out as normal. Fledgling Flight is going to drop eyeballs on 4 players, either tanks and healers or DPS. These eyeballs all face a set direction. What we're going to do is we drop them on cardinals facing outwards. If any of these are dropped too close to one another, they tether, explode, and kill, just like the orbs in the first phase. So make sure they're far enough apart, and make sure they're all facing outwards, because that's the direction they're going to attack. As long as everyone's middle, everyone dodges the attacks automatically. Experimental Gloryplume is going to start with a Shiva from normal mode. From earlier in phase 1. But it's then going to combine it with either a stack or spread. If you see the the small orbs here, this signifies that you want to spread. So wait for the Shiva to go off, dodge towards where the first or second one hits, and then have your group spread out in their pre-assigned spread positions. If instead, after you see the Shiva tell, the Blackfire orbs are a large orb instead, this is party stacks. And again, make sure you've got your tanks in one group, your healers in the other. Next one's a big, hard-to-see mechanic, Fountain of Fire. Let's try to break this down. Before Fountain of Fire starts, you want your tanks in the hitbox and everybody else outside of the hitbox. 2 towers are going to appear either at cardinals, at north-south or east-west. That's where the healers are going to go. Your tanks are going to get targeted with proximity AoEs based on the fact that they're baited AoEs based on the fact they were the 2 closest players. And you'll see the melees and ranged have gone and pre-positioned themselves ready for the rest of this mechanic. Let's explain what's going on here. First, the healers. They're responsible for taking 4 sets of towers. Every time that a tower explodes, this is going to do enough damage to almost instant kill the healer, but it also gives them a heal up buff. This means that all of their heals do absurdly high healing, and one GCD heal or one off global cooldown heal is probably going to be enough to fully top up your healer. This is a great time to use things like Asylum or throwing out a Sucker or Aspected Helios, just because it's going to hit the entire party, hopefully, and hit them for huge amounts of heals. So you won't have to worry about the party's health for the entirety of this mechanic if you do that. After you've soaked all 4 towers, if the healers have survived, the healers have done their job. At the same time as this, the other roles are going to take turns doing the following. First, 2 players go in and bait an AoE. They drop this in front of their healer's tower. These will explode and drop a bird. They're tethered to these birds, and they need to go opposite to stretch their tethers far enough that they won't die. Be aware if you're in the main tank, don't go too far out, just far enough to stretch your tether so the boss stays more or less middle to make this much easier. After a while, those birds dash at you, and don't leave your general cardinal or intercardinal you're on because you want to avoid other mechanics, but the mechanic is done for you. These will first we have them target the tanks by having them go middle first. Afterwards, once the tanks have baited, the melees can go middle, but making sure they're not too far middle because they don't want to get clipped by bird dive bombs. The melees, once they've baited, they go out, and the range can go in ready to bait theirs. Be very careful as a melee. Your birds will drop, but don't cross too soon. Wait for the tank birds to cross first to go. Everything continues, and now the ranged are going to get their baited AoEs by being the 2 closest. They go out, and everything continues exactly as before. Be aware, taking more than one mechanic, so hit by more than one of these baited AoEs, or taking a tower when you've taken a baited AoE, will lead to you dying. It sometimes can be required because missing a tower is almost guaranteeing a wipe, but be aware that you have to make sure everybody's only doing one roll, otherwise it will lead to deaths. After everything's done, there's going to be 2 Scorched Exaltation raid wads. If you have your shield healer cast a single shield onto the party, this will almost certainly be enough to heal up and cover both of these raid wads. And then stack up for the last Heat of Condemnation Tank Buster. Dealt with exactly the same as before. Finally, the big one, Firestorms of Asphodelos. For this, have your groups break into their light parties with tanks and melees in the north, The boss is always facing south, so melees you'll be able to get your positionals, and healers and ranged in the south. 3 fire tornadoes appear always in the same positions. The boss will start casting Experimental Ash Plume to show you that there's going to be a stack or spread, and at the same time force you to do a 3-to-1 dodge. Look at where the third AoEs hit, in this case A to C, start there, and dodge into the first AoEs after they go off. Be looking for stack or spread as you do this. Be aware that there's constant fiery rain, just like in ad phase, so healers be aware of your party's health, because they'll constantly be taking small chip damage from the fiery rain. This repeats with another 3-to-1 dodge. It can be the same, it can be different. And after the 3-to-1 dodge is done, the boss is casting Storms of Asphodelos, and there's a lot to deal with. Now, if you're doing the standard original strat that was seen, it looks something like this. What's happening is each of the fire tornadoes are going to target the nearest player with an AoE. So players, there's 3 of them, the healers and 1 ranged, are baiting those away from the group. 3 players nearest to the boss are getting hit with Protean Wave style cleaves. And 2 players who have a tether are hit with a Tank Buster, just like the normal Heats of Condemnation one. Now, if you do this, this works, but you have to be very careful that your tanks are not too close to the tornadoes, that they bait the fiery AoE from the tornado, and not too close to the boss, that they accidentally bait a proximity, like a Protean Wave, towards them. One strategy that helps to avoid anybody getting hit by more than 1 mechanic, which is lethal, is this, known as Elmo strat. The whole group agrees on a intercardinal to go to. The tanks can pick up their tethers very easily from there, and they're going to go south to bait virtually every mechanic, while a single healer or ranged goes north to bait and deal with the top fire tornado. The southern fire tornadoes target the tanks and miss the group, while the northern one targets that healer. Both of the tank busters are going to target the tanks together. And finally, the proximities, 2 of them will target the tanks, 1 of them is going to target the group. The way this works, it requires your tanks to be invulning both of them, but if you've got a way to handle those invulns and you've got no need for it in the rest of the fight, this can be a really convenient way to minimize the risk of this. This also allows you to adjust for deaths, that you can survive lots of deaths. Sorry for the pause, my cat needed to be let out. Next up is Darkblaze Twister. Darkblaze Twister is going to happen almost immediately after Firestorms of Asphodelos resolves. 1 of the tornadoes is tethered with a purple tether. 2 of them get red tethers. Focus on the purple one. Stack your group clockwise from the purple tether and bait 4 sets of Searing Breeze puddles in a clockwise fashion, slowly moving your way towards that purple tornado. You're going to get an Experimental Ash Plume, and as you're looking at the stack or spread cast, you want to position yourself near to the purple tornado. It's going to give off a knockback. Afterwards, the 2 red tethered tornadoes are going to give off donut AoEs. We see that it's a stack. We position for our knockback. We hug the tornadoes for this, and then we stay stacked because that was shown. Be aware, if you are spreading, you can start to spread while dodging the donuts, so you can run around the tornado towards the backside to make the spread a little bit easier. Immediately afterwards, stack middle for a Scorched Exaltation raid wide, and then you're done. Death's Toll is the next mechanic. This one's not too bad. The boss is going to give everybody a debuff, but we'll worry about those later. First, Fledgling Flight. The same eyeballs from earlier appear, but this time we want to face them inwards so that their attacks are facing towards the middle. We do this because of those debuffs. If you have a 1, you need to die once by standing in a position that will let you get hit by 1 of these cleaves. To do this, stand behind 1 of the eyeballs. Doesn't matter if there's more than 1 person on the same eyeball, this will mean you get hit by exactly 1 of the cleaves. If you have a 2, stand on an intercardinal. This way you'll get hit by 2 of the cleaves. And if you have a 4, stack due middle, so you get hit by every single cleave. These go off 1 at a time, and immediately after all 4 are hit, everybody should rush to middle to get huge amounts of healing because Life's Agony is getting cast. The party needs to be more or less full health to survive this, and because they have a heal down debuff during this, it's quite difficult to top everyone up. Unless you have an Astro. If you have an Astro, have them cast Macrocosmos, and as a result, this will full heal the party almost instantly. If you don't have an Astro and you're stuck with not enough heal tools left from healing up other mechanics, a heal LB is always a surefire way to make sure that the entire party gets healed up. The last newish mechanic is Experimental Gloryplume. The only thing that makes this new is this is now, unlike the previous one that was a Shiva to start, this is guaranteed to be the out. Stack middle, and immediately go to pre-assigned positions, my group does north-south, and wait to see if you get the stack spread. The out hits almost immediately after you see the black orbs, so make sure you've moved out in advance, and then either stack or spread. From here on out, everything's repeated mechanics. You get another dive bomb. This can be either the stack variety or the spread variety. Deal with it exactly the same as in Phase 1. Devouring Brand happens again and is dealt with exactly the same as before. If you have the Shiva, make sure you go to where the first AoEs hit. Don't forget to stack for the Searing Breeze puddles. There's just one set of them. And finally, we get ourselves a Cinderwing, which if you dodge, you're now just a couple of raid wides away from killing. Scorched Exaltation will go off twice, so heal up in between, and then Final Exaltation is the Enrage. If you've managed to kill the boss before then, congrats on clearing P3S. Good luck with this fight. It is a real tough one, this tier. I wish you all the best of luck with it. Thanks for watching.